We now move to question time, and I call Senator McGrath.
Thank you. My question is to the Minister representing the Prime Minister, Senator Wong. In yet another hit to Australians' hip pockets, working household living costs have increased a shocking 19.4% under the Albanese Labor government. The damage done so far by the Albanese government to hard-working families and households is food costs up 14%, housing up 14%, health up 12%, education up 11%, and insurance and financial services up 96% in less than 3 years of an Albanese Labor government. Despite all your rhetoric, why are Australians paying the price for Labor's economic incompetence?
Thank you, Senator McGrath. Minister Wong.
Thank you, President. I thank Senator McGrath for the question. It gives me the opportunity to reaffirm again that since we have when we came to government, we saw that inflation was high and it was rising. Under the government he was a part of, real wages were falling, living standards were declining and people were going backwards. Now inflation is a third of what it was at the election and is falling. Real wages are growing again. Living standards are rising again, and we have had the lowest average unemployment rate for any government in 50 years. Now, I know that those opposite might like to think that the creation of more than 1.1 million jobs, the most jobs created on record in a parliamentary term, is a bad thing. I know that those opposite have a view that rising wages is not a good thing. We know that their position has been that low wages are a design feature of the Australian economy. I mean, this is the position that they want. And I'm asked also about the cost of living for Australians, and I want to make it very clear. We are absolutely clear that a lot of Australians are finding it really tough with rising costs of living. And that is why we have made it such a priority to provide support and assistance with cost of living. And what is amazing to me is that those opposite ask about cost of living as if they care about the cost of living of Australians when they voted against assistance to Australians to help them with the rising cost of living. So everybody should understand, that those opposite, whenever they ask about cost of living, are the party that has voted against cost of living relief to working Australians time and time again. Time and time again, that is the truth of what the Liberal Party believes.
Thank you, Minister. Senator McGrath, first supplementary.
Thank you. Australians' living standards, that is real disposable income, have collapsed by 8.7% since May 2022. This is the biggest collapse on record and worse than any other OECD economy. Despite all your rhetoric, why are Australians paying the price for Labor's economic incompetence?
Thank you, Senator McGrath. Minister Wong.
Again, I would say to those opposite, it is the case that cost of living pressures remain. They certainly have. They certainly remain. They certainly are challenging for Australians. But I would say that they are in a far better. We are in a far better place than we were some time ago. And in fact, the cost of living indexes released today is another reminder of the substantial and sustained progress we have made in fight against inflation, with lower growth in living costs. Across every household type compared to what it was at the time of the last election. I'll say that again. Lower growth in living costs across every household type compared to what it was at the time of the election when you were in government. They're the words of a Liberal Prime Minister. They're not the words of a Labor politician. So let's be clear. We understand people are doing it tough. What we don't understand is why you keep voting against the system.
Answering has expired. Senator McGrath, second supplementary. Senator McGrath's waiting for silence. Senator McGrath.
Can the minister, on behalf of the Prime Minister, confirm that Australia has been in household recession for 766 days? Why is it that Australians are paying the price for Labor's economic incompetence?
Thank you, Senator McGrath. Minister Wong.
Thank you, President. Well, what I can confirm is that if inflation is at a third of what it was at the election and is falling. What I can confirm is real wages are growing again and living standards are rising again. And what I can confirm is we have recorded the lowest unemployment rate, average unemployment rate, for any government in 50 years. I can also confirm that the priority of those opposite is not cost of living relief. It is not cost of living relief when it comes to energy bills. It is not tax cuts for every Australian. It is not rising wages. You know what their priority is? Long lunches. Long lunches for bosses, which are funded by, let's be very clear, are funded by taxpayers. They are asking the cleaners and the teachers and the construction workers of this country to subsidise long lunches. That is the priority this Dutton coalition has, and I think Australians are very clear about who has their back and who does not.
Thank you, Minister. The time for answering has expired. Senator Green.
Thanks, President. My question is to the Minister representing the Prime Minister, Senator Wong. The Prime Minister and Minister for Health and Aged Care today announced the Albanese Labor government's landmark new agreement to properly fund public hospitals and health services for another year. How will the plan strengthen Medicare and build Australia's future?
Order. Just a moment, Minister. Order. Minister Wong.
Well, thank you to Senator Green for her question. And this is a transformative new health agreement that will make a real difference to the lives of millions of Australians. And I'm unsurprised that Liberal senators laugh when we talk about billions of dollars going into public hospitals. I'm unsurprised that Liberal senators laugh when we talk about billions of dollars going into hospitals that families go to, take their kids to, that our ageing parents go to. I'm unsurprised that you laugh at a government that is actually putting money into public hospitals, because, Senator Ruston, we know—
Minister Wong, please resume your seat. Senator Ruston, I called you by name. I asked you to stop the running commentary and you simply ignored me. I want order and silence. Minister Wong.
I'm unsurprised that Senator Ruston laughs at an additional $1.7 billion to fund public hospitals and health services for another year. I'm unsurprised that Liberal senators laugh at record levels of funding, with $33.91 billion for 25-26 that will be delivered to every state and territory to help cut wait lists, reduce waiting time in emergency rooms and manage ramping. And, of course, this is on top of all of the historic investments that Labor has made to Medicare as part of our work to build Australia's future, delivering the largest boost to Medicare rebates in decades, more in 2 years than they did in 9. And the fact that they laugh at public hospital investment really shows the contempt with which the coalition looks at Medicare, shows the contempt with which they treat Medicare and the health services that Australian families need. Well, unlike you, we believe Australians should be able to access affordable, reliable health care. That's what we believe. We don't believe health is a laughing matter. We believe that it is a part of what we do in government to provide health services to Australians, and that is in comparison to those who cut $50 billion from public hospitals while Mr Dutton was Health Minister.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Green, first supplementary.
Thank you, President. Minister, how will all Australia's states and territories benefit from the game-changing health announcement the Albanese Labor government made today?
Thank you, Senator Green. Minister Wong.
Thank you, President. Well, I am very pleased to confirm that all Australians will benefit from Labor's announcement, from the Prime Minister's announcement today. The Commonwealth contribution in every state and every territory will increase by 12% in 2025-2026. Let's remember those opposite. They cut public hospital funding. Under us, public hospital funding is going. And we are also delivering one-off funding boosts with $407 million for New South Wales, $402 million for Victoria, $414 million for Queensland, $158 million for Western Australia, $169 million for South Australia, $50 million each for Tassie and the ACT, and $51 million for the Northern Territory, all of which is at risk from Mr Dutton's secret cuts, all of which is at risk. And this is a man, the GP tax health minister that was Mr Dutton was. You can't trust Mr Dutton with health.
The time for answering has expired. Senator Green, second supplementary.
Thank you, President. Minister, I note the Prime Minister's comments today that access to healthcare should depend on your Medicare card, not your credit card. How is the Albanese Labor government making it easier for Australians to see a doctor, buy cheaper medicine and get the healthcare that they need?
Thank you, Senator Green. Minister Wong.
Thank you, President. From the day we were elected, the Albanese government has been working to strengthen Medicare and to make it easier for Australians to see a doctor, because Labor built Medicare and we will always protect it. We've made medicines cheaper by reducing the maximum amount Australians pay for PBS medicines, and we are freezing the maximum cost of PBS prescriptions until 2026. And for Australians with pensions or concession cards, we've frozen the price until 2030. And the landmark new hospital agreement we've announced today will boost funding for hospitals next year. And we are also taking the pressure off hospitals through our urgent care clinics. Now, we know Mr Dutton wants to make $350 billion in secret cuts to services. That's even before he spends $600 billion on his nuclear announcement.
And
now
Minister,
what we know is he's a risk to Medicare.
Senator Patterson.
Thank you, President. My question is to the Minister representing the Prime Minister, Senator Wong. Yesterday, the Prime Minister was asked when he was first advised of the planned mass casualty terror attack against Sydney's Jewish community, to which he told the House, quote, "We don't go out there and brief about National Security Committee meetings. We don't discuss those details because it's an ongoing investigation." End quote. The Australian revealed today at least 6 occasions when the Prime Minister has publicly disclosed NSC meetings or intelligence and security briefings, including following the Adass Israel synagogue firebombing. Minister, why is it appropriate for the Prime Minister to discuss briefings and NSC meetings about the Adass firebombing, but not the incident in Dural?
Thank you, Senator Patterson. Minister Wong.
Thank you, President. I have said previously in this place that I'm not going to comment on operational matters regarding national security. What we want to do, and what we all—
Minister Wong, please resume your seat. Senator Cash.
Thank you. And it's a point of order in relation to relevance. We tolerated these answers yesterday, but I can assure you today, when you were in government, you made it clear, the minister made it clear—
Senator Cash, you're now debating.
This is
Senator
not
Cash,
an operational—
Resume your seat. You are now debating. The minister is being relevant to the question. Minister Wong, please continue. Minister Wong, please continue.
Thank you. Senator Patterson, I think you did ask me this question yesterday, or might have been one of your colleagues. I'm sorry, I can't recall which. And the answer I gave yesterday will be the answer I give today. And the reason for that is that our focus is ensuring that we can support the police in delivering—
Minister Wong, please resume your seat. Senator Cash.
Again, the point of order is in relation to relevance. Disclosing the date of when the Prime Minister was briefed cannot possibly be categorised as being prejudicial or confidential.
Senator Cash,
I would ask you to draw the minister's attention to the question.
Called a point of order. You're now getting into the substance of the question. The minister is being relevant to the question. Minister Wong. Senator McKenzie, I do not need your running commentary. Minister Wong.
Thank you, President. I will note that the New South Wales Police themselves have made clear that the publicity or publication of information around this investigation has been has caused, has compromised our investigation and been detrimental to some of the strategies we may have used. I certainly won't be adding to that, and I'm surprised Senator Patterson would add to that, and I invite him to take a more responsible course than that is being advocated by some of his colleagues.
Thank you, Senator Wong. Senator Patterson, first supplementary.
Thank you, President. The same article also revealed that, and I quote, after the Wakeley Church terror attack, Mr Albanese on April 16 said he'd been briefed by Mr Kershaw and ASIO Director-General Mike Burgess. Mr Albanese was also briefed by the AFP on July 12 last year about a Russian espionage case. End quote. Why did the Prime Minister think it was appropriate to publicly speak about briefings from our security and operational agencies during ongoing investigations last year, but not now?
Thank you, Senator Patterson. Minister Wong.
Thank you, President. Well, I am surprised that Senator Patterson continues with this line of questioning when he has seen what the New South Wales Police have said. Clearly, it's frankly, I know that Mr Dutton is a reckless politician, but this is quite a reckless.
Minister Wong, please resume your seat. Senator Cash.
Point of order again in relation to relevance. It would be great if the Minister representing the Prime Minister could tell us why Chris Minns was able to be up front with the Australian people and yet the Prime Minister is not. And I would ask you to direct the Minister to the question.
Senator Cash, you weren't happy with my last ruling. I've sought the advice of the clerk. The Minister is being relevant, and that is also this time the advice of the clerk, and it is my continuing advice. Minister Wong, please continue.
Again, I know that Mr Dutton is a very reckless politician, very focused on his political strategy.
Order.
This is about keeping Australians safe, and if you were serious about keeping Australians safe, you would not play the political game that you are playing with an ongoing investigation.
Minister Wong, please resume your seat. Senator McGrath, when you asked your question, you quite rightly waited until there was silence. And I ensured there was silence. I have called order 3 or 4 times and you've simply shouted over the top of me. I'm requesting that you be silent. Minister Wong, please continue.
Of course, the immense hypocrisy from those opposite when Mr Dutton on Sunday confirmed he hadn't even asked for a briefing.
Yeah, there you go.
Order across the chamber. Order. Order across the chamber. Order. Senator Colbeck, Senator Patterson is on his feet. Show him respect. Senator Patterson, second supplementary.
Thank you, President. Why is it that New South Wales Premier Minns can be upfront with the Australian people about when he knew about what could have been one of the most catastrophic acts of terror seen in Australia, but the Prime Minister is unable to answer the same basic questions and is keeping Australians in the dark?
Thank you, Senator Patterson. Minister Wong.
I would say this to you, Senator Patterson. You're right to say to make comments about the potential catastrophic incident, which is why it ought to be treated as seriously as we are treating it. Unlike some on your side, we want this investigation to find everyone who is associated with this activity and these events and what was found in Dural to be apprehended and to face the full force of the law. That's what we want. What you want and what Mr Dutton wants is a very different set of political strategies. We want to put Australian safety first, and that is what we are doing.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Steele-John.
Thank you very much, President. My question is to the Minister representing the Health Minister. Last month, Clean Bill released their 2025 Blue Report, revealing that all across the country GP bulk billing rates have dropped and out-of-pocket costs have continued to rise. The AMA yesterday stated that the average length of a GP consult is now 18.7 minutes. Will the government commit to extending the tripled bulk billing incentive to everyone and increasing the rebates for longer appointments in order to bring down out-of-pocket GP costs?
Thank you, Senator Steele-John. Minister McCarthy.
Thank you, President, and I thank Senator Steele-John for the question and for his deep interest in the area of health. Like Senator Wong, we are incredibly proud of the announcement today in regards to boosting our hospital systems right across Australia and, in fact, behind Medicare. Can I say, Senator Steele-John, that in November 2021, 6 months before the last election, the financial viability of general practice was in serious trouble after the Coalition's 6-year freeze on Medicare rebates that started when Peter Dutton was Health Minister. Now, the Royal Australian College of General Practitioners took the extraordinary step of calling on every GP in the country to stop bulk billing to maintain the viability of general practice. Then Dr Karen Price said, "This is why, as a college, I'm exhorting everybody, including my own practice, to move as many people as you can onto private billing." At the time of the last election, the Health Minister Mark Butler said general practice was in the most parlous state in the 40-year history of Medicare. Bulk billing was falling off a cliff, President, because of the 6-year freeze on Medicare rebates. And we have a different approach, Senator Steele-John. More doctors, more bulk billing, more urgent care clinics, and that's our approach to strengthening Medicare, which is why we tripled the bulk billing incentive from the 1st of November, Senator Steele-John, last year. We tripled it in the largest investment in bulk billing in history. And since we tripled the investment, we have seen a turnaround in bulk billing, a national increase of 1.9 percentage points in the first year, 75.6% to 77.5%.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Steele-John, first supplementary.
Thank you, President. The GP workforce is in crisis right now because GP trainees are not afforded the same pay as their hospital colleagues, not afforded the same respect often by this government and this health system. Will the government commit to closing the gap for GP trainees to make general practice a genuinely attractive option again?
Thank you, Senator Steele-John. Minister McCarthy.
Senator Steele-John, and thank you, President. Senator Steele-John, thank you for the question. We know that workforce issues actually hit right across Australia in different points, certainly after COVID, and we certainly moved in terms of the health space. And even in the First Nations health space, we have provided an opportunity for 500 health traineeship positions. Now 300 or so, and I can get those numbers for you, are in place. And we are aware of the concerns around GPs, but we know that supporting and tripling bulk billing in terms of Medicare in this country is absolutely critical to assisting the employment situation across Australia.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Steele-John, second supplementary.
Thank you, President. Not that long ago, Australians could go to the GP and reasonably expect that their out-of-pocket costs would be minimal or non-existent. As so many in the community now know, that is no longer the case. Will the government commit to ensuring that everyone in Australia can see the GP for free?
Thank you, Senator Steele-John. Minister McCarthy.
Thank you, President, and thank you, Senator Steele-John. Look, the number of junior doctors choosing to go into general practice grows each year. In 2025, a record 1,750 offers are expected to be made to junior doctors to begin government-funded GP training, and around 40% of these future GPs are commencing their training in the new general practice speciality of rural generalism, which will support people in rural areas to access primary care. And I'm enormously proud in the Northern Territory, President, where we are going ahead in terms of Charles Darwin University's push to be able to see more doctors graduate from Charles Darwin University, as well as Flinders University in the Northern Territory. The Australian health system added 1 new doctor every hour last year, on average, with more doctors joining in the last 2 years than at any time in the past decade.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Marielle Smith.
Thank you, President. My question is to the Minister representing the Treasurer, Senator Gallagher. The Albanese Labor government has prioritised the delivery of cost of living relief at every opportunity because we know that people need support. This has included a tax cut for every taxpayer, energy bill relief for every household and 1 million small businesses, cheaper medicines, more bulk billing and Medicare urgent care clinics, cutting the costs of childcare and free TAFE. Why is it so important to provide cost of living relief and policies that make a difference in people's lives?
Thank you, Senator Smith. Minister Gallagher.
Thank you, President. I thank Senator Smith for the question and also for her continued advocacy on behalf of the people of South Australia to make sure that the government continues to provide cost of living relief where we can do so, when we can responsibly provide it without adding to the inflation challenge that we've been dealing with, that we inherited from the former government. The Albanese government has seen inflation come down, wages go up and more jobs created. And at the same time, 1.1 million jobs, which I know those opposite hate to hear, 1.1 million jobs in one term of government, wages going up and cost of living support provided, where we've been found room in the budget to do so, where we've prioritised cost of living support, whether it be the tax cuts that were made fairer so that they helped all taxpayers, whether it be the energy bill relief that we provided to households and small business that those opposite opposed, whether it be the cheaper medicines, an issue we brought into this parliament that those opposed, more bulk billing that those consider wasteful spending, and more Medicare urgent care clinics, also included in the language of the opposition as wasteful spending. Well, I challenge the opposition to go and chat to a few people using the urgent care clinics and ask them if they think that's wasteful spending. Maybe to the people that are going into the emergency department that Senator Ruston was laughing at before. Maybe ask them if they think that investment in public hospitals is wasteful spending. Maybe when people go and get their 60-day scripts.
Minister Gallagher, please resume your seat. Senator Ruston.
Madam President, could you please—
Order.
In relation to the personal reflection that was just made by the minister, which I would say is completely inaccurate,
that is a debating point.
Well, could you ask?
Oh, OK. Beg your pardon, Senator Ruston. It was a personal reflection. I will ask the minister. Minister, if you could withdraw.
She did. All right. I withdraw. Again, I would challenge those opposite, President, for all of those families that have benefited from the investment in early childhood education, whether they consider that wasteful spending, because that is what the opposition is saying. We've got inflation low, we've got wages up, and we've got employment and jobs up as well.
Senator Marielle Smith, first supplementary.
Just over a year ago, the Prime Minister announced that the Albanese Labor government will deliver fairer tax cuts for all Australians, not just some. How are Labor's tax cuts helping Australians with the cost of living and ensuring they keep more of what they earn?
Thank you, Senator Smith. Minister Gallagher.
Thank you, and I thank Senator Smith again for concentrating on cost of living and how the government is supporting households where we can responsibly do so. Obviously, those tax cuts are flowing through, and as a decision we took 12 months ago, the Prime Minister, the Treasurer, took a decision to make them fairer, so not just some people would get a tax cut, but 14 million taxpayers across the country receive a tax cut thanks to our fairer tax plan. And those benefits will be even bigger from July this year, which the figures from the Treasurer show that there will be even more money on average in the pockets of every taxpayer next financial year. We've got stronger wages growth, we've got strong jobs growth, and those tax cuts are flowing through to help households. These are the priorities of the Albanese Labor government: a focus on cost of living, get inflation down, cost of living help where we can, clean up the budget and make sure that people get a fair crack at jobs and opportunities from new jobs across the economy in the future.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Marielle Smith, second supplementary.
How does Labor's economic plan support Australian households, and what are the priorities going forward?
Thank you, Senator Smith. Minister Gallagher.
Thank you very much. Well, our priorities are low inflation, keeping wages growing, more jobs, more opportunities and cost of living support where we can provide that. Now, that stands in stark contrast to those opposite. From the policies they have announced to date is a $600 billion bill for nuclear energy for some time in the future to deliver 4% of our country's energy needs. $600 billion. $350 billion in cuts to pay for the nuclear plan that they have of nuclear reactors around the country. And the other one, $10 billion for people to go out to lunch and slug the taxpayer for it. That is the plan. That is the contrast between a government that's focused on cost of living health, while you're focused on nuclear reactors and breaking the budget in order to fund it, and then cutting services, cutting pensions, cutting Medicare, cutting schools funding, cutting hospitals in order to pay for it.
Senator Hanson.
Thank you very much. My question is to the Minister representing the Minister for Climate Change and Energy, Senator Watt. According to many reports and warnings from the industry, Australia is this year likely to find itself in the position of needing to import liquid natural gas to shore up supplies on the East Coast. This is despite the fact that Australia has enormous reserves of gas in places like Queensland Bowen Basin, and Australia is one of the world's largest gas exporters. Minister, will you please explain why the Albanese Labor government has allowed this ridiculous situation to come to pass, especially when your renewables plan cannot possibly work without natural gas?
Thank you, Senator Hanson. Minister Watt.
Thanks, President, and thanks, Senator Hanson, for the question. Senator Hanson, you're right in saying that there's no doubt that Australia does need more gas to be supplied, and that is because even for many of us who want to see more renewables brought into the system, because it is the cheapest, cleanest form of energy available in the future, it is going to require more gas as a backup source. And of course, there's a lot of manufacturing outfits right across Australia that rely very heavily on gas. And that is why we have taken a range of action to ensure that we can obtain the gas supplies that Australia needs. Already in this term of government, we've seen gas developments approved by this government, necessary for that manufacturing gas that's needed and also to back up renewables into the future. The reality is we are dealing with a situation where we inherited many warnings of gas shortages that were provided to the coalition over the years in government. In fact, AEMO and the ACCC issued a dozen warnings about gas shortages over the decade the coalition was in power. Now, we can't wish away the consequences of a decade of neglect, but we are acting on both supply and price, while also being a responsible energy partner for the countries to whom we do export gas. Some of the things that we've done have been to take strong action on gas supply and price by introducing the Gas Mandatory Code of Conduct, by expanding AEMO's powers to address market shortfalls, and by responsibly approving new exploration and production. And our work to deliver more gas at more reasonable prices is making a meaningful difference. The latest ACCC outlook forecasts surpluses of gas on the East Coast in 2025 and 2026. Under the Gas Code of Conduct, we've secured more than 600 petajoules of domestic gas, which is enough to power East Coast generators for 6 years. We've seen new gas come online for East Coast users through the Senex project in Queensland, something the coalition never managed. And of course, our future gas strategy established a long-term plan to help address supply challenges.
The time for answering has expired. Senator Hanson, first supplementary.
Minister, I would dearly love to know when you are going to stop blaming the coalition for what's happened in the past when you've been in government for nearly 3 years. In 2024, Australia exported almost $70 billion worth of natural gas, and about 56% of these exports attracted no royalties for the Australian taxpayer who owned these resources. Qatar receives about $26 billion for its exports, while Australia receives less than 10% of that. Minister, when will your government act to ensure Australians receive a fair return for all natural gas extracted and exported by foreign-owned multinationals?
Thank you, Senator Hanson. Minister Watt.
Thank you, Senator Hanson, for the question. Of course, what we've sought to do in the one term, or not quite one term, we've been in office, is to shore up gas supplies, both for domestic use and to meet the export contracts that have been entered into by a range of gas companies over previous years, well before we were ever in office. The fact is that Australia does produce much more gas than we use at the moment, and the gas that we don't use here is exported. And those exports make a lot of money for Australia, including in towns like Gladstone. I was in Gladstone a week or two ago, Senator Hanson. I don't know when the last time you were in Gladstone was, but there are many jobs in towns like Gladstone that depend upon the export of gas.
Minister Watt, please direct your answers to the chair.
Okay. Well, President, I don't know when Senator Hanson was last in Gladstone, or when Senator Canavan was last in Gladstone, or any of them were in Gladstone. But I was there only a couple of weeks ago with Senator Ayres, talking about the work that we're doing to shore up aluminium supply and also gas
Minister.
supplies into the future.
The time for answering has expired. Senator Hanson, second supplementary.
I'm glad you're getting around the state. You are a Queensland senator. Australia has all the gas it needs to meet domestic demand for at least the next 40 years, but the Commonwealth has no policy to ensure sufficient reserves, and as a result we are facing shortages on the East Coast. Minister, will you please explain why the Albanese Labor government has not implemented a domestic reserve policy similar to Western Australia to ensure we do not run short of this vital energy resource?
Thank you, Senator Hanson. Minister Watt.
Well, thank you for acknowledging the work of the then Western Australian government, Labor government, in providing a domestic gas reserve. But the reality is that we do have a range of measures in place to meet Australia's domestic needs for gas while being a responsible trade and energy partner. And as I said, there are hundreds, if not thousands, of jobs in towns like Gladstone and many other towns around the country that do rely on gas production and gas exports, and we don't want to jeopardise them. Places like Roma, as Senator Chisholm says. I'm sure you've been out to Roma at some point, Senator Hanson, and have noticed—
Minister Watt,
I'm sure that Senator Hanson has been to Roma and has observed the jobs that are produced through gas production and gas exports. Queensland and Western Australia both already have state-based reservation schemes, and gas produced in New South Wales, Victoria and South Australia is for domestic use only. In addition, our government has produced a future gas strategy, which is all about making sure we can meet our domestic needs and those export contracts.
Thank you, Minister. The time has expired. Senator Hume.
Thank you, Madam President. My question is for the Minister representing the Prime Minister, Senator Wong. Minister, more than 27,000 businesses have gone insolvent since the Albanese government was elected in May 2022. The December 2024 quarter was the worst on record, with 3,852 businesses becoming insolvent. This is the third worst quarter on record in a row, following the June 2024 and the September 2024 figures. Mr Albanese now holds the record for the most business insolvencies for a Prime Minister, with an average of 2,648 per quarter. When a small business becomes insolvent, people lose their jobs, people lose their homes, families and individuals suffer from severe hardship. Why has the Prime Minister ignored the record level of business insolvency under his government and instead made prices more expensive for small businesses, while also increasing their green and red tape?
Thank you, Senator Hume. Minister Wong.
Thank you, President. Well, the senator is right to talk about the importance of small business. They are the engine room of our economy, and they're the hearts of so many local communities across the country, and certainly employ millions of Australians, some more than 5 million people, and contribute more than $500 billion to the nation's economy. The advice I have is that the number of small businesses have actually increased by around 140,000 to a record 2.6 million. Now, obviously, that is a good thing, but we are conscious of the pressures facing small business, which is why the government has helped to ease the pressure on Australia's 2.6 million small businesses by providing more than $640 million in practical and targeted support. Now, I know the opposition said they would. The opposition, we know, voted against energy bill relief for small businesses. Can I also indicate that the government has updated the Commonwealth procurement rules, and small businesses are now getting a larger slice of the $75 billion in contracts that the Australian government spends each year, with a 40% target for contracts up to $20 million in value and a 25% target on contracts up to $1 billion in value. So using the power of Commonwealth procurement to ensure that small businesses get a reasonable share of what is a very large procurement budget. We're also improving payment times to small businesses with a total investment of $33.4 million for a series of new reforms. In addition, we've supported small business with $60 million in cyber and digital support. So I would make the point. We recognise the importance of small business to the economy, and we have sought to provide assistance in the ways I've outlined and many more.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Hume, first supplementary.
Thank you, Madam President. A dry cleaner in Gordon in Sydney, Mr David Weng, recently saw his energy costs increase from $2,000 a month to nearly double, $3,826 a month.
Hilarious, Katie.
He said, "It's shocking.
Order.
It's killing us.
Order.
It really spoils
Order.
my business. If you're
Order.
running like that, there is no way
Senator
you can keep
Gallagher.
going." Will the Prime Minister admit that his failure to address energy prices and his failure to deliver the $275 price reduction is contributing to the record level of small business insolvencies?
Thank you, Senator Hume. The time for asking has expired. Minister Wong.
Thank you, President. What I would say to Mr Wong in relation to energy costs is we understand that energy prices have been very difficult for many small businesses, which is why this government did provide energy bill relief in previous budgets. And it is disappointing that those opposite who pretend to be the champions of small business in this country voted against it. So if you care, Senator Hume, about the energy prices that small businesses are paying, about their cost to their business, please explain to the chamber and to Mr Wong why it is that you chose to vote against energy bill relief for small businesses in this country. Let's be very clear about it. And let's remember also that we take our advice from the energy market operator, who has confirmed time and time again that Australia's energy system should be focused on the cheapest form of energy, which is renewables, backed up by gas.
Thank you, Minister. The time for answering has expired. Senator Hume, second supplementary.
Minister, 4,191 hospitality businesses have become insolvent since Labor took office, and 603 of those became insolvent in the December quarter alone. 90,000 hospitality jobs have been lost under your government. Why is the government now opposing coalition policies which are designed to help the hospitality sector and the hundreds of thousands of Australians who work in hospitality?
Order. Senator, order on my right. Order. And Senator Cash, I've just called order. Order across the chamber. Order. Senator Gallagher and Senator Watt, come to order. Minister Wong.
Well, this is Mr Dutton's plan for a long lunch-led economic boom.
Yeah.
A long lunch-led economic boom. And, you know, what an extraordinary run-up to that question. And, you know, I have some sympathy for Senator Hume, who has been out there trying to defend what I'm sure she knows is a dud of a policy.
Senator Hume, you've asked the question.
And trying to defend it without putting out a costing, and now coming in here and saying things are really bad, and so the way we're going to do it is vote against energy price relief, but we're going to ask workers to fund tax breaks for long lunches. That's our economic plan, and that's our set of priorities. This only a Liberal opposition, led by Peter Dutton, by Mr Dutton, could come up with such a ridiculous policy. Such a ridiculous policy. And not only look at their priorities. $1.6 billion, up to $10 billion a year on the long lunch. How is that good economic management?
Thank you, Minister. Order across the chamber. Order. Senator Thorpe.
Thank you, President. My question is for the Minister for Indigenous Australians. You recently met with State and Territory Indigenous Affairs ministers about the huge number of unsentenced children being held in prison around this country, where we know their human rights are being abused. But despite your best efforts with these meetings, we know state and territory governments are moving backwards. Just this week, your Labor colleague in Victoria, Premier Jacinta Allen, announced she's reviewing the bail laws that have just been brought in so she can hold more kids in prison unsentenced. Why are state governments ignoring you?
Thank you, Senator Thorpe. Minister McCarthy.
Thank you, President, and I thank Senator Thorpe for her question. Clearly, as we've said in the Senate on many occasions, that the area of justice is a state and territory issue. But the senator is correct, President. When we did meet in November in Perth, I did meet with all Indigenous Affairs ministers, as well as the Coalition of Peaks, who represent around 800 Aboriginal organisations from across the country, along with my co-chair, Pat Turner. And what we did do at that ministerial council, President, is call on every minister at that table to go back to their cabinet and to look at the issue of remand. We are deeply troubled around the rising rates of remand in this country, especially with our youth, and the overcrowding that's taking place. And it's not just with our youth across the other jurisdictions. I'm also very concerned about the area that I come from in terms of the Northern Territory. So, in terms of the question around whether the ministers have responded, that has been sent off to the ministers in terms of a letter has been sent off to the ministers following up on where they are at with it, and that is something that both Pat Turner and myself are following very closely.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Thorpe, first supplementary.
Great. Another letter. Numerous legal experts told the Children's Justice Inquiry that your government could enforce standards on states to protect the human rights of children. You can use external affairs powers and funding agreements like we see in health and education. Why does your government keep saying there's nothing concrete you can do to protect children when clearly you can?
Thank you, Senator Thorpe. Minister McCarthy.
Thank you, President. Well, I certainly reject from the outset that our concern for children and our rules around children, in terms of the question that you put, Senator Thorpe, you may not have seen, but just a few weeks ago we did announce the interim Children's Commissioner for First Nations children across the country, and certainly we want to see the successful applicant for that position announced very soon. So we are making endeavours, but we do recognise that the role and the Care and Protection of Children Act across each state and territory jurisdiction is a state and territory jurisdiction matter. So the role of the First Nations Children's Commissioner is to do precisely that in terms of the areas that Senator Thorpe is raising.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Thorpe, second supplementary.
Very disappointing. Will you tell the Prime Minister, and Attorney-General to use the legal powers and leverage we know you have to uphold our international human rights obligations and protect children from ongoing abuse, or will we just see more chats and meetings that go nowhere? Because that's all we hear from you.
Thank you, Senator Thorpe. Minister McCarthy.
Thank you, President. Clearly, the communication that has to occur often does happen by letters or phone calls, Senator Thorpe. It's really important. It's really important to be able to work.
Senator Thorpe.
It's really important. Obviously, the senator doesn't want to hear the answer. So, President, it's really important to be able to communicate in an effective way with state and territory jurisdictions, and that is what I am doing. And I have answered the senator's question in terms of the children and in terms of the First Nations Children's Commissioner.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Urquhart.
Thank you, President. My question is to the Minister representing the Minister for Skills and Training, Senator Watt. Building Australia's future is about creating a better life for Australians, building more accessible education and training, and creating new employment opportunities. TAFE education and training plays a central role in providing Australians with the skills they need to get the jobs they want. These jobs are in areas like construction, early childhood education and aged care. What steps has the Albanese Labor government taken to reduce the cost of training, and how is this helping Australians to get the skills they need for the jobs they want?
Thank you, Senator Urquhart. Minister Watt.
Thanks, President, and thanks, Senator Urquhart, who I understand is a graduate of Devonport TAFE in the electorate of Braddon. What a fine product of the TAFE system she is. Well, the Albanese Labor government is building Australia's future, including by ensuring Australians have the opportunity to gain the skills they need to get ahead for free. We're delivering free TAFE as part of our action to drive inflation down, lift wages up and create more jobs. In fact, the Albanese Labor government has now delivered free TAFE to almost 600,000 Australians. More than 6 in 10 places have been taken up by women and 1 in 3 in regional and remote Australia. We've had 39,000 people enrol in construction courses, 40,000 in early education, 54,000 in digital technology and 150,000 in aged care and disability care. And of course that means huge savings for students. But of course free TAFE is on the chopping block under Peter Dutton and the Coalition. It's one of the $350 billion worth of cuts they've pledged if they win the next election. And why do they need such savage cuts? Well, of course, it's to pay for their plan to shout $10 billion worth of free lunches for bosses. Mr Dutton isn't content with his plan to cut workers' pay. Now he wants workers to shout their bosses' lunch. And now we finally know how much Mr Dutton's long lunches policy will cost taxpayers, up to $10 billion a year. Now, the opposition says this is all about supporting small business. So I was surprised to hear Senator Hume on 2GB yesterday saying the policy would subsidise a lunch at that well-known small business, Kentucky Fried Chicken, that battling Aussie small business KFC. And she added to that this morning on Sky, telling us that after they've had a productive week, take them out to the pub, buy them a chicken schnitzel. So there we have it, the Coalition's IR policy. It's schnitties, not skills, palmies, not penalty rates, Wagyu, not wage rises. Under Peter Dutton, you will be worse off. You cannot afford Peter Dutton.
Thank you, Minister Watt. And I do remind you to refer to others in the other place by their correct titles. Senator Urquhart, order! 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 Senator Hume and Ayres. Senator Urquhart, first supplementary.
Under the Albanese Labor government, almost 600,000 Australians have enrolled in free TAFE. Mr Dutton and the Coalition have described free TAFE as wasteful spending.
Order.
Wasteful spending. How is the government's free TAFE policy helping Australians with cost of living pressures while investing in the future, and why is this policy so important?
Minister Watt.
Well, thank you, Senator Urquhart. Free TAFE is making a difference to Australians, and that's why we're making it permanent. It's giving Australian workers and employers the skills they need, all while reducing cost of living pressure, which is probably why Mr Dutton and the Coalition want to cut it. We've heard them call free TAFE wasteful spending and that it needs to be cut. And this, of course, is coming from the party that has come up with its Burgers for Bigwigs plan, where taxpayers will subsidise long lunches for bosses. And they still won't tell us what it will cost. Just today, one day, we've had Senator Hume refuse to say at all how much it will cost on Sky News. We had Susan Lee on the ABC saying it will $250 million. We've had Senator Canavan say it will cost less than $250 million on Channel 9. And we've had David Littleproud indicate it will cost about $125 million on Sky Regional. You can actually clear this up by releasing the costings. The costings of this policy is a bigger secret than Area 51, the way this is going. It's a bigger secret than Scott Morrison's secret ministries. Come clean and tell us what it will cost.
Thank you, Senator. I do remind you, please refer to those in the other place by their correct titles. Senator Urquhart, second supplementary.
Thank you, President. When speaking on the free TAFE bill, the Deputy Leader of the Opposition said, if you don't pay for something, you don't value it. What are the key barriers to Australians accessing free TAFE, and why won't the government be pursuing alternative policies?
Thank you, Senator Urquhart. Minister Watt.
Well, thanks again, Senator Urquhart. By removing financial barriers, free TAFE is helping Australians to gain skills and build their future. Now, we know that Mr Dutton and the Coalition have made it clear that they don't believe TAFE students are worth the investment, with snobby remarks like that one from Ms Lee saying that if you don't pay for something, you don't value it.
Order. Senator Wong.
Thank you, President. I've been very zen but Senator, over a lot of interjections, but Senator McGrath has been shouting across the chamber for a great deal of question time, and I really would ask him to stop.
Sadly, Senator McGrath, I'm going to deal with this one first. You have been very loud since we started question time. I invite you to make your contribution during taking note or at some other time. Thank you. And would ask you to come to order. Senator Ruston.
Thank you. On a point of order, I'd like Senator Watt to withdraw his personal reflection on the Deputy Leader of the Opposition in the other place.
Senator Ayres. Order. Order. Yeah. I will remind the chamber that that remark, which I'm not going to go into, was being made quite freely by the opposition. I took it in the spirit that it was intended, that it was a joke, but I will ask Senator Watt to consider withdrawing. I'll put you on notice. If he withdraws, I will not tolerate it any longer from the opposition. Minister Watt.
I withdraw, President.
Thank you.
So at the same time, the Coalition is saying that free TAFE is not worth funding. What they do think is worth his funding is their secret plan for $10 billion in long lunches for bosses. Now, the Shadow Treasurer, the leading economic spokesperson in the opposition, has even claimed that their long lunches policy is a productivity measure. This week, he was asked, and where are the productivity gains from? I guess it's the lunch and tax deductions. And Mr Taylor said, we're pulling every lever we can to drive productivity. The Palmy productivity plan from Angus Taylor. We know that the Coalition is going to cut free TAFE. They've already said they will, just like they'll cut wages, but it's roll gold for bosses and free lunches.
Thank you. Senator Rennick.
My question is to the Foreign Minister, Senator Wong. The country of Syria has recently been overthrown by terrorists formerly associated with ISIS and al-Qaeda. There are reports these terrorists are abusing and killing Christians and other minorities. In 2012, the then US Deputy Secretary of State, Jake Sullivan, sent an email to Hillary Clinton saying that al-Qaeda is on our side in Syria. In 2016, the LA Times reported that terrorists funded by the Pentagon are fighting terrorists funded by the CIA in Syria. Given the Australian government has previously condemned the Assad regime for its atrocities, why has the Australian government said nothing about the human rights abuses in Syria committed by the current regime, and is this because Australian foreign policy is controlled by deep state Western intelligence agencies more interested in imperialism than upholding human rights and democratic values?
Thank you, Senator Rennick. Minister Wong.
Well, thank you for the question, Senator Rennick. And in relation to the last assertion, I would reject that. And I would say to you, Australia always should and continues to support international law and human rights. And obviously how we reflect that support it varies, and it may be bilateral consultations, it may be public statements, it may be what we talk to people about privately, it may be what we talk about publicly. But as given who we are and the values and interests that Australia has, international law, including respect for human rights, matters to us. You are correct that there was the Assad regime has fallen. Obviously, that ends decades of brutal oppression, and we hope it could be the end of what has been a horrific period for Syrians marred by conflict, division and displacement. And what I have articulated previously at the time of the overthrow of the Assad regime is a call on all parties to protect civilians, to refrain from violence and to prioritise dialogue. In relation to the organisation which was involved in both the overthrow and is also part of the current Syrian regime, which is Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, HTS. I would just say to you, Senator, Australia listed HTS as a terrorist organisation in 2022 due to concerns over its conduct. Obviously, we again would say it's critical that Hayat Tahrir al-Sham and other armed groups who are now in control protect all Syrian civilians, all Syrian civilians, and like other partners, we will be watching the actions of HTS in the period ahead.
Senator Rennick, first supplementary.
Thank you. What does the Australian government have to say to Australian veterans who served and died for their country in Iraq and Afghanistan, only to find out that they were fighting for imperialist organisations that were lying to them, the first being chemical weapons in Iraq and the second being al-Qaeda is the enemy in Afghanistan, when al-Qaeda was actually being funded by the same imperialist organisations?
Minister Wong.
Well, it is true, certainly in relation to the assertion of weapons of mass destruction, that history has demonstrated the problematic nature of some of the decisions that were made by past governments. But can I say what I would say to all veterans is that we always stand with the men and women in the ADF who serve the government of the day, who engage in action overseas when asked to, who serve Australia bravely, and we always thank them for their service, regardless of whether or not at the time or subsequently people may have different views about the government's decisions at the time. We are very privileged and honoured in this country to have very fine men and women in the Australian Defence Force who demonstrate discipline, courage, determination, professionalism across the globe.
The time for answering has expired. Senator Rennick, second supplementary.
Will the minister please ask our intelligence agencies if the entire war on terror over the last 2 decades has been nothing but a Western intelligence PSYOPs campaign designed to advance Western imperial interests in the Middle East? And does this campaign include funding Hamas, given the deep state has funded other Islamic terrorist organisations such as ISIS and al-Qaeda through programs such as Timber Sycamore?
Thank you, Senator Rennick. Minister Wong.
Senator Rennick, whatever your views, I don't think it would be correct to say that the threat of and the existence of terrorism is not something that Australian governments across the globe have to deal with. It is the case. But what I would say to you is we have to deal with that, both by being very focused on national security matters, on making sure we take the advice of agencies, including our intelligence agencies, but also our law enforcement agencies. And we also have to deal with some of the conflicts and misinformation which give rise to that sort of hateful ideology. But I thank you for your interest in these matters. But on some of these issues, I don't agree with how you are articulating some of the past history. And on that note, if I could ask that further questions be placed on notice.